Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Note Closer Show. As always, Scott Carson, your host. Excited to be here today. And I am jacked up to have a friend as a guest on today who is doing some amazing stuff out there. Just absolutely rocking it. I mean, literally killing it. Not only in her own real estate side, but she's also got a new book out called Winning Deals in it's always Nancy Wall joining us, Dallas,
Hey,
Texas
Scott,
this morning,
thank
right?
you so
Good
much,
morning,
and thanks
Nancy.
for
How's it
having
going?
me on your podcast. And yes, I'm super excited about my book. It was just a really good feeling to get the book out, and I think it's going to help a lot of people that want to get into real estate investing.
Oh, I think so too. I love how the book is written. I love how you got some great stories in there, some from very strong women in heels out there doing some great stuff out there. But for those that don't know, because you're in Note Nation now, all right? We've known each other for a couple of years from different real estate events, and we got a chance to kind of reconnect on the Financial Friends Network cruise last February, and then meeting at the Propelia meetups again and stuff like that. Take a second to share a little about what you and your husband are doing with your real estate investment stuff.
All right. Well, we started investing about 15 years ago. And so we were originally from Phoenix, Arizona. And when the market went like that, we had been looking to move from our house that we had lived in for 8 years. And we were amazed at what people were paying for houses there. It was insane. So you know what we did? We just quit our jobs, sold our house, and moved to Texas. Texas hadn't actually rebounded quite. And that gave me the freedom to start investing. And I always had a passion for real estate investing, wanted to get into it. I was very fortunate to meet a woman who mentored me and helped me buy rental properties and taught me everything. I got into property management. So fast forward, when you're in real estate investing, there's so many avenues to go. You can do flips, you can do buy and holds. And last year, I literally fell into owner financing. I found a house for $10,000, paid cash for it, sold it 3 days later for $50,000. So I got the terms were get the $10,000 back, 20% down, and I'm carrying the note for 40. And that made a true believer out of me on owner financing, because you still get that monthly check and you don't have all the repairs. So so I found myself so many opportunities. If you go out and network and meet great people like you, and it just it gives you ideas about, I could take my business this way. So where I found myself is I didn't know everything about buying houses. And then through the book, which I know we're going to talk about here in a minute, I started meeting different women that were doing different things, had a different story. But one of the things we all had in common was, one, we had a passion for real estate. Two, we were pretty strong women in terms of we knew, we were willing to take chances, calculated risk, and we were consistent with what we did. And then that paid off. And each of us has our own story of how we got started. But those are the three elements that we all had in common.
Yeah, that's definitely an underlying thread throughout each chapter. Each woman you interview definitely is drawing quite a few of them in the book. And I honestly think we need more women out there sharing their stories and really speaking up. It is, I'm a guy, it's a very male dominated industry for the most part, right?
Well, and that's I wanted the book was to kind of highlight, there's a lot of successful women real estate investors, but I found over the years as I went to conferences, and there might be, out of a 3-day conference, there might be 1 or 2 women speakers. It's not that they're not out there. It's just that they haven't had maybe an avenue to showcase their results, or, a lot of times, this is a woman's perspective, but sometimes women are too busy taking care of the family and the kids, and, maybe they're holding down a job. And so time becomes not an ally for them, right? And sometimes they just lack the confidence and or knowledge. And, there's plenty of women out there that will mentor you, and you do not have to pay them tens of thousands of dollars. There's a lot of information. So I just felt like it was important to highlight women in real estate investing. So, and that's why I wrote the book.
Oh, well, that's a beautiful thing. So Talk about your background. What were you doing before you got into real estate, though?
Okay, so I have a degree in social work. And so
Okay.
for a long time, I was a programs manager over Section 8. And this was like, I don't want to date myself, but this was before they had vouchers.
Okay. All
And
right.
I was actually instrumental in setting up in Johnson County, Kansas, the first Section 8 program. And back in the day, Johnson County, Kansas was the second richest nation in the country. And so the city council members and the population didn't really think they had needy people. So I actually devised the waiting list and got very familiar. So I got into housing way back when. So fast forward a few years, I moved to Phoenix, Arizona, and I answered a blind ad in the newspaper, and I got hired at United Blood Services, which at the time was the second largest blood bank in the country. And I was a field rep, went out to the companies and set up the blood drives. And long story short, I inherited the call center. Now, there's probably viewers that don't even know what a rotary phone is, but this is in the day when they had computer printouts and they had a rotary phone and they would call people. So I worked with another company and we computerized the call center, right? And I merged. Well, then that led to different opportunities where I traveled all over the US, Canada, and even did a stint in England where I worked with blood banks to consolidate their call centers, become more cost effective, and because it's less expensive to get a donor into a center than taking a mobile vehicle out to a company. So that was kind of my claim to fame. And after 9/11, again, dating myself, but I was involved with my first published article is in transfusion medicine, if you can believe that. And it has to do with a first-time donor study. After 9/11, a lot of people came out and donated. And if you're a blood donor, you're going to understand this. And so in our market in Phoenix and the market in San Francisco, we had over 3,000 first-time donors. So a team of doctors contacted us, asked us if we would run a study for a year. We broke the people up into 4 categories and basically called them and marketed to them to see what made them come back a second time. Because a lot of blood wasn't used after 9/11. I know that's, right. If you're a blood banker, you know what I'm talking about here. And then after that was done, that was actually published, and I'm one of the authors of that article. So transfusion medicine, I'm not going to say the year because I have a copy of the Transfusion Medicine magazine. So
that's okay. Well, that's the thing is I wanted to highlight a little bit because it's a different background than some people, and that's okay. That's the beautiful thing about real estate and note investing and owner financing. It doesn't matter what your background is as long as you're diving in, getting knowledgeable, and as I like to say, pulling the trigger when it comes to
right. And it's kind of funny because even though that's blood banking, there are some similarities to calling distressed sellers. Because number one, we always used to say, getting blood out of a turnip, and getting a seller to take your offer, kind of similar skills to get them to kind of do what you need them to do to get the quota or get the deal or whatnot. Because we were measured on, even though it's nonprofit, they still have to make $1 to stay open.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. Totally agree with the similarities there. Now, let's kind of transition back a little bit into the book. So what, you talked about wanting to highlight more women out there, and it's a beautiful thing. I think it's a great thing out there. Talk about the book. Let's talk about what's probably, now that you've gone through it, you interviewed some great women throughout the chapters. What was probably the most surprising nugget that you took away from your interviews with these women?
So the most surprising nugget is none of them had a real estate background. They all come from different kinds of fields. Some of them were college educated, some college wasn't for them. So everybody some had families early, some waited a bit. Some of them, they all admitted to not knowing they didn't know what they were doing. They just started in and started. And, what I learned the most was that it was a very real, everybody made mistakes and they all said, but you learn from your mistakes. They all said, find a mentor, and I think the most surprising thing for me, even though I've been investing, I learned every single one of those gals in the book, I learned something from them that can help me in my business. And I think when we ended up having a group book signing where I think 8 of the 11 of us were able to come. And some of them don't know each other. Like I didn't know every single person in the book. So I would talk to one person and they'd say, well, why don't you talk to so-and-so? And then why don't you talk to so-and-so? And I probably could have written a book that had 100 women in it. I'm thinking about doing book 2. And so I just learned that they all had a passion. They found mentors and they networked. And they just made it work. And they would go down one road and it wasn't working, but they just didn't stop. They didn't quit.
That's a good point. That they found a way to make it work. They all have their own little angle on their focus and unique set of eyes
Yes.
to situations. And I think a lot of us as real estate investors, male or female, we get so used to being in a groove, in a rut of doing the things, it's sometimes hard to see a deal with a fresh set of eyes.
Yes. And then
identify an opportunity there.
When I first started the book, I was actually going to write it from the angle of the differences between men and women in real estate investing. Well, that's sort of, if you've been in the workplace, it's kind of the same, whether it's real estate or blood banking or whatever, right? Yeah. So, but one thing that is kind of underlying is that women do feel, if they felt confident enough in what they knew, and they were assured as far as what their skills were, and they were open and honest about that, then it didn't matter if it was male or female. You know what I mean? The reason one of the things that happened with the book, I was like, oh, don't do that. So a good friend of mine, and she's fairly new into real estate investing, she was doing her first flip, and she called me up, and she was in tears. And she was in tears because the contractor, she just didn't know how to manage, because really it's about skills. People skills. You have to have management, time management, organizational. And she's like, I didn't know what to do, and I just started crying in front of him. So again, I'm old school, and I was taught and brought up, that women kind of always have to be a little tougher. You know what I mean? And I was like, well, that's probably not the best way to handle that particular situation, because if you're a manager of a company, whether you're male or female, and you go in and people aren't doing what you need them to do, you're not going to start crying. You know what I mean? And I felt bad for her, but I was able to give her some tools. And what she really was lacking was process and checks and balances. And she didn't have the knowledge to put those things together, because again, in real estate investing, there's a lot of skills. It's not, everybody talks about, well, I'd love to find the deal. Great. But when you find the deal, you still have to manage it, whether you're going to wholesale it. You have to track your performance, because you got to know where your marketing dollars are going to. And so sometimes we watch HGTV, which I love it, but it's not real. And
it's a great fictional show. Very great fictional show, right?
You'll meet people and you'll ask them, well, why'd you get into this business? Well, I love watching HGTV. Well, great, but they never, one of the things that kills me, I'm a real estate broker, when they do all of those, how we sold and how much money, they never tell you how much they paid that realtor, because they always hire one, right? And it's just so unreal. And I think it would be really great. There's a couple. I love the lady in the Windy City. I love her. She's pretty dramatic. But again, when I go to a flip, like when we get done here today, I have to go out to a house, and I will not be dressed up to go to that house, because it's a mess. I might be slinging a hammer, but my hair is going to be up, and I'm going to have my grody jeans on and all of that. So.
Yeah, you're not going to be wearing your heels, be wearing tennis shoes or boots.
Yeah, I do have, depending on if I need to when I do the final walkthrough, I'll wear my heels then. So, but yeah, and so I think, just kind of being focused. And we had our first meetup, which I know you're going to talk about. And one of the gals said, I just lack focus. And again, you'll meet real estate investors, and they're trying to get into flips, and they're trying to get into rentals, and they're trying to get into owner finance. And so really, I think the other nugget that I learned from the women is, and they learned this pretty early on, is you got to master one thing, then move on to the next. Don't try to do it all, because you'll fail. You cannot, I always say to people, you cannot be all things to all people. You can't, you just can't do it. And it's unrealistic expectations. I can be I'm a good project manager. I manage, but I have other people that, follow up with the sellers or do my data entry or whatever, but I manage my process so that things get done. And that's how you can scale your business. So
that's such great words of advice there, because I think that's a big handicap for a lot of people is they get sold the idea, well, hey, let's add this to our tool belt. Let's add this strategy to our tool belt, so if it pops up, we can jump into it. And they're trying to sometimes squeeze blood out of rocks on deals, you know what I mean, versus being focused. And everybody struggles with that. I mean, I struggled with that. I'm gonna be a wholesaler. I'm gonna be a landlord. I'm gonna raise some capital. I'm gonna do subject twos. I'm gonna do owner financing. Everybody struggles with that. And you said it best there, and that's a big nugget for everybody, is find something that fits you and stick to it and master it before you add something else to take away your focus, right?
Exactly. And even I still do it too. So like when writing the book, that took some time, and I had to be careful because I was just super excited about the book, but it's like, I sound like I'm gonna get rich from the book, right? So I still have to like make money over here. So you have to balance your time. And I'm a big believer in, I look at tasks I have to do on a day-to-day basis, and I figure out how much is that going to cost if I have to do it. I have such a funny story. So my husband, he does help me, right? So I told him last year, I said, we need to hire somebody to be our assistant in the office, and he goes, oh no, I can help you with that, because once you start getting busy, you have the paperwork and you have this and you have to handle the rehab budget. And he's like, oh no, I can handle that. And I was like, great. So I took him up to the office and said, okay, I have these 8 things that are all pretty much data entry. And he looked at it and he's like, yeah, I think we just need to hire somebody. At some point you have to go, don't say, I can't afford it. Ask yourself, how can you afford it? That's what I say all the time. If I want to, go on a vacation, or I want to hire more staff or do more deals or spend more money on marketing, I always say, okay, well, not that I can't afford it, because if you say I can't afford it, you're not going to be able to scale and grow. So you have to find a way to just ask yourself, how can you afford it? Maybe you have a $300 gym membership that you're not going to, or whatever it is. Each person has to make those choices, because what you do today and the choices you make are going to benefit your future on down the road.
Not only benefit, but they can also unbenefit down the road too.
Yes.
It's the truth. So many people, and I love that you said that. How can I find something versus why I can't do it?
Right.
You get many I can'ts versus I cans out there these
right.
days.
Well, and if you have that attitude, you're just, and I think that's the other thing from the book, is that they all figured out a way to do what they wanted to do. Some of the gals had full-time jobs and they didn't really like their full-time jobs, but they knew they just couldn't quit. So they started doing this. Or some of them talk about, the money they spent on gurus and didn't really get anything. You know what I mean? Now, sometimes you have to make those mistakes, but hopefully you're not making, $25, $30, $40, $50,000 mistakes like that before you start going to like podcasts. And, there's so much information on the internet, and you do have to take the time to learn things. You can't just jump in, and networking is always great, meeting quality people and that can help you, and there's a lot of people out there that will help you.
Yeah, that's the truth. It's your network is your net worth, basically, and that's the thing. You can learn a lot from networking. You learn a lot from YouTube videos. You can learn a lot, especially podcasts. There's such a wealth of information out there for great things out there, but you're going to learn more from pulling the trigger and doing your first deal. But you always want to make sure you're educated first.
Yes, don't do that. Don't plunk down. Don't go out and take a second mortgage on your homestead so that you can go buy a house. Don't do that. Now, one thing, I'll give everybody a little nugget that helped me. So I found a way in the early days to go to conferences, that had to do with real estate investing that were outside of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Because you got to get outside your area, because most investors are kind of close to the vest about, their secrets and what's working. But if you go to another market at a conference, oh my gosh, your eyes will be open and you'll be able to bring that back for your business. And I have found that's one of the keys to, new ideas, and not that you don't get them when you're networking, but you just get so many more, because you can literally ask somebody, okay, well, I have this issue, blah, 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 blah. And they are completely open and with whatever it was that they resolved their issue, where sometimes you go and you ask that question and, you might have to talk to 4 people before you get some answers you can put all together. So, and that's just my experience.
Well, but I think it's also people realize, oh, hey, you're not my next door competitor. You're not the.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is. It's, we're all very, I mean, if you're going to be in this business, you do have to be driven. You do have to be competitive. And yes, that is the thing. So
Good
go
stuff.
to other markets.
Yeah, exactly. Or in cases, sometimes if there's events taking place on the high seas, which you're getting ready to jump on the Financial Friends Network cruise here. It's going to Cuba and some other things, and you're going to be speaking on there as well. Walter's got you speaking on a couple of things, right?
Yep. So I'm very honored to be one of the guest speakers. It's a great list of people. So when he asked me, I was like, sure. And I'm going to be talking about using virtual assistants to do cold calling. So I'm really excited about it. And it's just kind of interesting how life kind of circles back, because who would have guessed when I left the blood banking industry that I would be learning what I knew about call centers to apply it to my real estate business. But, we've been able to apply KPIs, key performance indicators. I'm very familiar with calling times, I'm just going to give another little, like any of you out there that have people that are cold calling, this is no lie what would work. We used to have mirrors sitting at the table where they were calling, and we would always say, smile before you dial, because when you smile, your muscles in your face go up and it makes your voice lighter. So we would literally put little mirrors and remind the staff to look at yourself, make sure you're smiling when you're dialing. So that's a tip for everybody to use with their cold callers.
Such a great tip. I totally recommend it when people are dialing for banks and asset managers, because if you call and you're in a bad mood, it comes across and it will not go well, right? The energy.
Cold calling is the worst. And I do have to say, if you're going to add that to your business, you need to do it first. Whether it's for the banks, asset managers, sellers, because it's a brutal job. I mean, I think if you want to cut your teeth, go to Craigslist and call some FISBOs. You know what I mean? But remember to smile while you dial, because, it's a lot of negativity, a lot of no's, and you just got to realize, what, the next call could be that, $40,000 profit deal you're looking for,
Yep.
So you have to go through a lot of, what do they call it? Kiss a lot of frogs before you find the princess.
Well, the thing I usually say is every no was you were one no closer to yes.
Exactly.
Is the thing I would do. And I would always, because I'll still call banks from time to time. I called some last week on some smaller lists we were calling on, but that's how I cut my teeth on the first really year, was just dialing, making 50 to 100 phone calls, calling banks, getting their non-performing notes. I was on a podcast earlier talking about that. And you have to make it a game, because yes, you'll get a lot of no's. If you're in a negative mood, a no will only make you dive deeper down.
Right. You just kind of got to just chin it up and,
Yeah. And so what I used to do is I would also say, okay, each no was worth something. And so if I knew that if I got a yes, it was probably going to be somewhere between 35 and 50,000 profit on that yes, whether it was a list of assets or a deal that we were flipping or something. So that means every no was worth at least probably $500 to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I would do. Hey, I got another $500 closer to that $35,000 paycheck. I might look at it.
Yeah. So just, I think, and you just can't give up, but it is. And if you're going to add virtual calling or cold calling of any kind, it doesn't necessarily have to be virtual assistants. You need to do it yourself. Number one, you're going to know what it feels like, so you can be a better manager. Number two, you're going to get an idea of the times you should call, and you're going to come up with some measurements, because, if you spend money to buy a list, and then you're going to spend time and money on hiring and training people, that's all a cost that you're going to incur before you see a result. So you have to have ways to measure it. And then, of course, you have to be able to follow up. So we do follow-ups with our gals every day. I have a report. It tells me exactly. Now, another little tip. So if they're not performing to where they need to be, I don't just automatically assume that they're not doing their job. So I look at the list that I gave them. Maybe it wasn't very good, maybe there was a computer malfunction, so usually the two things are the list, and maybe I didn't match the right script to the right list. So there is some list management. So someone called me today and asked me about all of this, and I said, well, you have to have a plan. Like, what's your plan? who do you want to call? When do you want to call them? Right, which I can help them with. But then I said, what are you going to do when the phone starts ringing? Who's going to answer the calls? Are you seasoned enough to talk to these sellers? What kind of sellers are you talking to? So there's a whole lot more than just, oh, I'm going to call some people. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. So now you're using VAs to do this.
We are using virtual assistants, exactly. So
Where are they located? Are they U.S. or Philippines, or where are they located?
We come from the Philippines. So I just, hired them through Upwork, but we did a little vetting system. I love the book, Fire Yourself. If you don't know the book, go get it, because I'm all about firing myself. And and I took it's actually about hiring asset acquisition managers, but I took that same format and I used it to basically qualify my virtual assistants and also my assistants that I have that do my day-to-day. I have a couple of assistants that work in our office, and so I also use that same kind of process to weed out, because number one, I'm a busy gal. I do not have time to do 10 interviews to find one person. And so that book kind of gives you some ideas about how you can screen qualified applicants so that you can get the one, and you're spending less time interviewing, but more likely getting the better, more qualified person.
That's important.
Yes.
Time is money, and that's one of the hardest things is in labor and training, right?
Right. So, but yeah, so we use virtual assistants. I will say that it was a learning. I'll just kind of tell you how I started with it. I said, okay, well, I know how to do this, I know, and I have personally called and got on the Mojo dialer and, been yelled at and gotten deals. And so I personally know, and then from my blood banking days, of course. But once and another little tip, so when I wanted to do this, I started asking, well, hey, Scott, how do you do this? And hey, Joe, how do you do this? And hey, well, and, everybody would give me this much info. And I was like, so what I ended up doing was interviewing like 20, 25 people, just saying, hey, can I buy you lunch? Can I get you a cup of coffee? Networking. And so after I talked to all those people, then I was like, I just put it all together. And I will say that we had some learning curves. We started in a different market that wouldn't affect the Dallas market. I had a chance to market in the Atlanta market, which is, it's competitive here in Dallas, but whoa. But we actually tested our virtual calling in Atlanta first and worked out all the bugs before I started doing it here in Dallas. So, then we got through the holidays. And so they have actually seen, and then we lost one VA, because you do have to realize that it's, in call center business, you got to constantly monitor your folks and probably replace them because they just don't hang around. And we saw their numbers go like this, and then when you call people around the holidays, you can use a little bit more softer script. But when it's right after the first of the year and all property taxes are due, people are kind of grouchy about that here in Texas. So
yeah, just a little bit. We get the
higher property right. I'm personally protesting my own taxes this year. So.
Well, it's not that it's not as difficult as it used to be. It's easier these days.
No, yeah. So
that's good stuff there. Good stuff. Now, out of the book, is there a story that kind of stands out the most to you? Not your favorite one. We don't want to be impartial to the rest of the amazing female authors on there, but is there a story that kind of where somebody overcame probably the biggest hurdles to find success that you can think about?
That's a hard one. I'm going to give a shout out to Kristen Gerst, because Kristen, I met her. In fact, we were talking about it last night. I met her at this random meetup that she was doing, and she only did it this one time, and it was about owner financing. And I went home and I did everything she said about how to find them and get them and all that, and I got my first deal within 3 or 4 weeks of that meetup. And so that was kind of my connection with Kristen. And she knows a ton of people. I know she's been on your show and whatnot, and she's so helpful. So I just started talking to her, and she was actually the first person I called up, and I was like, girl, I'm thinking about writing this book. What do you think? Oh, I think it's a great idea. So she was actually the first person that I interviewed. And then from her, I got Amy Sayer from August REI. But I think I'm going to have to give a shout out to Belkis. Belkis is in Houston, and she's got 2 little kids. And her husband are amazing. I mean, all the women are amazing, but my special heart for Belkis is that she's in the Houston market and I'm in the Dallas market. And I was kind of struggling a couple years ago. And her and her husband ended up mentoring me just via phone calls. They gave me some focus. They gave me some some nuggets that I could use in my business. And it wasn't like they were giving anything that everybody else doesn't say, but I think they felt, because they were in Houston and I was in Dallas, and I was like, well, how do you do this? And so they actually were the ones that told me about Fire Yourself, that book. And so I had a couple more follow-up calls. So Belkis and her husband have done an awesome job. They've, paid off their house. They're raising their children, and they're living the life that everybody wants to live in this industry, and they're wonderful people. They're very sharing people. And I think her story is more real, as far as she's just a regular gal. She's a mom, she's a wife, and she just said, hey, let's do this, because they haven't been investing that long, you know what I mean? Like under 5 years, I think. And they were so gracious. And, I think that I just appreciated that as someone that's been in the industry, and not that I knew everything. I knew some things, but how is this not working? Because like I said, I've been investing in real estate for 15 years. And so now I wanted to go do flips, and, and I'd never been in a competitive Dallas market, with all these other 100,000 investors. So they really helped me get focused, and they gave me nuggets that really helped me. So I think I'm going to just give a shout out to her. And then she took time to do that while she continued to grow her business. And they're an awesome couple.
That's such a great story. And I think it's so powerful and impactful, the fact that, hey, sometimes when you're dealing with an issue, pick up the phone and call somebody. I think so many times we get so bogged down into, oh my gosh, wallowing in our mud. I'm doing something wrong. I'm really hateful self-talk that if we said that to other people, the cops would show up to ourselves. Right? Yeah. And you have to realize that, hey, sometimes you just got to pick up the phone, talk to somebody, get an outside in opinion, or outside counsel is probably a better way to look at it. Somebody who can give you some great advice and tell you, hey, I went through this, or try this, and go that route, right?
Yeah. Every woman in the book, they all have amazing stories. I will tell you about Jamie Woolley. I did not know her. And she ended up being the last person that I interviewed. And our good friends at Propelio, Ryan Harper, I was actually on a show there, and I was kind of finishing up, and he said, well, and we were friends on Facebook, but I had never met Jamie. And so I called her up, texted her. She responded right away, said she would love to be in it. And at the time, I knew that she was kind of big time, but I didn't realize how big time she was. So I was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much, because I just got a magazine where she's on the cover of Think Realty magazine, talking about her business, and she's not really been doing it, for years and years. She's been doing it for some time, and she's got an amazing story as well, where she was just kind of didn't really like the job that she was in, and now she's kind of blown it out of the water. So and so then we actually, at the book signing, got to meet in person for the first time. So I think one of the things about the book is it was a really good way to connect, not only with myself, with the other women, but some of the women in the book didn't know each other, Sandra Nesbitt, she has a great story too. She, Sandra, now if you're watching this, she started in real estate, and she's from New York. And so she was like, oh, I wanted to find out about real estate. And so her story is that she did pay one of those, to go to someplace or whatnot. It didn't really help her. And, and she's built a great wholesaling business. She, has rentals and all of that. So she also has a really good story. So Amy Sayer, she'll tell you that she's grown up in the business and everything. And so now that we kind of have this relationship, it's really an awesome feeling when you go to different events and you see them, because it's like we have this special sisterhood connection. And I feel very comfortable picking up the phone and calling any one of those gals. And I know that they're going to help. Sue Abrams is a good friend of mine, and she's kind of low key, but she's, she does a really good wholesale business and has built her business up. And you have to remember, most of these women probably about half of them, they're doing it on their own. It's not, now Kristen and Amy, they own companies and they have people and whatnot, but most of the women in the book are started out on their own and they're still working on their own, and they might have some help, but they're doing it maybe out of their home or whatnot. So we're not talking about, we're talking about women that could be CEOs, but they're running their business the way it fits their lifestyle and it's making them happy.
That's a great point. And that's what I loved about the Underlines, that for some it's a side hustle around their life, their jobs, and things like that, and they're making it happen. Now, you mentioned about networking and stuff like that. You were just at an event or just recently with the Invest Her kind of meetup. You want to talk a little about that too?
Yes. So I was very fortunate to meet Matt Faircloth he does private lending and whatnot, and went to one of his seminars. And he, after he heard about what I do, I help people with small dollar IRAs as well, bundle them and become private money lenders. And so his book was about private money lending, but he had never heard of that before. So anyway, he said, well, you need to meet my wife. And so he introduced us and we had calls, and Liz started, she's out of Philadelphia, and she started the Invest Her community, and there's 25 chapters. And they did not have anybody to organize it here in Dallas. So she asked me if I would do it. I said, I'd love to do it. And we had our first inaugural meeting last night. And the focus is going to be, okay, no food, no booze, no, we're just there to network. And it is geared towards women, but we did have 2 guys last night, which we were happy to have them. We just told them, hey, this is from a woman's perspective. But it's more of a mastermind. So what we did is everybody got a chance to talk to themselves, and then we identified 10 areas, this was just last night, of obstacles that can stop you from growing your business. And, what are those obstacles? Then we broke up into small groups, and each group tackled one of those. Then we came back to the table and said, this is what we came up with. And everybody walked away with an action item. And so the group was challenged to say, how they're going to implement that into their business. So one of the topics last night was how to use social media to do your marketing. And one of our co-hosts, we have Haley Gant from Quest, Kristen Gers, Kelsey Wallace, who's also my daughter, are all organizers of the group. And so Kelsey has a social media background, and so she's going to give a presentation next week about how to use Instagram to grow your business. Because we said, how many of you even have Instagram? And about half of the hands went up. So social media is powerful, and it's a great way to get your name out there. But if you don't know how to use it, which some of the people, if they don't have Instagram, I personally myself just got an Instagram account this last year, and I'm posting and hashtagging, and it works.
It definitely does. And that's a great thing of having a Invest Her, not investor, for those that are listening, her investor with an H on the end, her out there. But that's the thing, is it's great. You bring like-minded people together, you're solving issues, and that's the beautiful thing about a true meetup.
And they also have like a Facebook group, so you can and now like Wednesdays is you post anything, but it really is focused on overcoming obstacles to grow your business. That's kind of what we're all about. And it was really good. One of the guys that came last night, he was one of the last people who spoke, and he gave us the biggest compliment. He said it was the most honest group that he had ever been to. The stories were real, the problems were real. And you know what? That was a really good compliment to the group. But we'll be posting some testimonials from the people that came last night, and got a lot of good feedback. And I don't think there's very many networking events, meetups, that follow that kind of format. It's usually like, well, we know which ones are the ones that you go and you network and whatnot. But this one really is, it's all about problem solving and about, what can we do and what can you walk away with to help you grow your business.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's kind of a funny thing. The thing that pops in my head is like when Steph and I go with a couple or something like that, where somebody's kind of new to dinner or at drinks or something like that, and we walk away, and the guys have a simple conversation, and then the girls know everything that's going on. Like, oh, they're dealing with this, they're dealing with that, they're dealing with this, and they're like, well, why didn't you ask? I'm like, I don't know, it just didn't go that way. But it's a different conversation, because you have a lot of issues, and I don't mean it in a negative, but issues that everybody's commonly overcoming. Like, how are you dealing with this? And women seem to share a lot more of that than guys do. A lot of us have to put on our bravo, very, oh no, I'm indestructible. I can deal with it. Very macho attitude, and women are like, go friend, what do you do when you're doing that, right?
Well, and one of the topics that came up with last night was partners and how to vet them, not just how to find them, because I think that's pretty easy, and a couple gals shared real stories about just because you and I like real estate investing doesn't necessarily mean we should be partners, right? And we talked about the ethics, and you have to be able to talk to people about money. I mean, that's what real estate investing is all about. And depending on how you feel about money, it might be uncomfortable. And if you're in a 50-50 partnership, yeah. So it was some good stories about vetting partners and what you should be, I mean, some people talked about, well, you should run background check and you should, but it depends on kind of what you're partnering about. But yeah, that was another good one. And the other one was about scaling your business. And put us women, we like to have everything. We're the control freaks, but we, are usually taking care of family and the household and maybe holding down a job. So how do you scale your business? Well, you have to put processes in place in order to be able to let somebody step in your shoe, but you also have to have the ability to let go, and I know I suffer from that. It's hard sometimes for me to let go, but you have to let go if you want to grow.
Well, I think it's everybody. I think as real estate investors, we're all control freaks. Everybody is, not men or women. But I think a lot of women don't realize. I'm a big in the note space, especially. It's a male-dominated space for the most part, and I actually think that women don't realize that it's easier for women to be calling, especially cold calling. We're talking about calling asset managers, because when a guy calls, a wall immediately goes up. What are they going to sell us? What are they going to pitch us? It's not as dramatic a wall when a woman's calling an asset manager. As I like to make a joke, if we have 50 voice messages, who are we going to call first? We're often going to call the ladies first as guys. And it helps with stuff like that. So I've seen proof, especially in the note space, if women are dealing with things, they're calling out, they have a better time. They have a better callback ratio. They have a better completion ratio. They have a better deal flow because it just works out that way, which is great. But a lot of women are scared to take those steps. They're scared to take those steps because they're scared of failure. And I'm like, it's, having a mastermind group or a meetup group that you can get together helps people take those initial first steps because they've got a support group, right?
And then, we had, and it was important to me to have like a wide range of folks. So I've been, in the industry and in the work industry for a few years. And then, but there's millennials out there that want to start too, my daughter being one of them. So I felt it was important to be able to present, if we're going to talk about a community, we want everybody, right? If you're new, you're seasoned. And, there was a lady there last night. She's just getting ready to start. And she's, in an older age bracket, you know what I mean? But she's worked all of her life because, one of the reasons I wanted to write the book is to give people a sense of, oh, you know what? It doesn't matter if you're retired, you raised your kids, you got divorced, you're looking for second income, or you just watch too much HGTV. That we all started somewhere, and there's a group of women out there that will help you and will, kind of point you. Now, one thing I will say is you got to be open. You've got to be open to new ideas and trying things, and sometimes getting a little out of your comfort zone. You know what I mean? Because one lady said, well, I know I can speak well, but I'm just not sure I could talk to a seller. Well, then you know what? You probably need to get a partner, and so the partner can talk to the seller. You know what I mean? So you've got to know your strengths and weaknesses, and then if you can't overcome them, then get people on board your team that can help you with that.
That's such a big thing out there. You got to have a team. You can't do it all, and there are people out there willing to help out. It's definitely important. You got some fan clubs online here. Give them some shouts out. Bob McNeese says, hi, Nancy. Our friend Nicole, the short sale Queen Espinoza says.
Oh, hey, Nicole, thank you. She's awesome, too. She is.
She goes, you have an awesome guest.
Too late.
Say that what again, Nancy?
I met her too late. I would have loved to have her. But she got her own book, so I got her.
Book number 2 for you.
Yeah, we got to do book 2, so.
Yeah. And then Derek Long from Quest is good. So good. Some other people out there watching out there as well, like Ingrid from Quest, everybody, Chris Savigny, And then Bob still watches as well too. So that's the thing. How difficult was it for you to write the book? I think it's gotten easier and easier to get a book published here. And I know a lot of people think, I got a book in me, but they don't know. And we're in the process of writing a book right now where we're using like Zoom to just record short interviews, 20 to 30-minute interviews on stories, get it transcribed and thrown it to a writer to put all the chapters together.
Okay, so let me just tell you, I thought, oh, I'm going to self-publish, right? And so if I didn't do anything else, I could self-publish, right? So I did interviews, and then I transcribed them with an app, and then I downloaded it into Word document. So I was going to actually about 2 pages in, I was like, no, this is not for me. And then I was going to have my assistant do it, and no, that wasn't going to be for her. So yeah, we ended up hiring somebody to transcribe it, and then and you know what? I'm so glad I did, because they were the ones that yes, you can do it, and you can spend time finding out how to do it, but you know what? I did pay to have my book published, and the guy that published the book, he was so funny because he goes, now, he asked me why. Like, he didn't want to take me on as a client unless he knew why. He goes, well, you're not going to get rich. And I joked with him, and I said, well, if I'm not going to be on the Oprah show for my book, in the book club. But I said, no, I'm wanting to do it. It's been a childhood dream of mine to write a book. Just never knew what it was going to be about. And the other cool thing about this book is I chose to donate part of the proceeds to Hope's Door, which is a organization here in Plano, Texas, that helps family heals from violence. So I feel that the book, not only is it a good tool for people to start their real estate investing, but when you buy the book, part of the proceeds go to Hope's Door, so you're giving back. And that was very important to me, is to give back, get the message out, highlight some of these successful women, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun. So
that's good stuff. Now, best way for people to get the book, it's on Amazon, correct?
Yes, it's on Amazon. They can also go to my website, site, kbnhomes.com, or they can even Google Winning Deals and Heels, and it'll take them right to it. So have everybody pick up a book today. Let's support all the women that are in the book. And you know what? Mother's Day is coming up. Great gift for your mother, girlfriend, significant other. Guys, why don't you read it, and you can see a perspective that, you might not have noticed in other women. So,
I like it because it's a great book if you've got a spouse that maybe is not on board.
Yeah.
You've got a spouse that maybe not just, different spouses, but it gives a different, different viewpoint of that. And it's a great way to say, hey, see, hey.
And not only that, here's the thing. This is what I wanted to make it accessible, right? I wanted to say, hey, we're out here, we're real people. And at the back of each chapter,
you've got the social media, you've got the contact info for everybody, which is great.
One of the gals, I'm going to give a shout out to Shanoa Grove, because she's one of the really, really successful gals. She runs a great big RIA here in Dallas. And so when I reached out to her assistant, because that's how far up she is, and she was so gracious with her time. We scheduled it, and she was, she has an amazing story too. I mean, she's like 4th generation real estate investor. Just every woman. I want to make sure I'm like, okay, who am I leaving out? So we got Sandra. Oh, Sue Tooney. Oh my gosh. I didn't know her either. And she is owner finance person. She's partnered with Scott Horn for years and years. And I had not met her, and her and I actually sat down, and I call her a good friend now. And I think that's the thing too. I became friends with these gals that I did not know. And that was simply, I took the risk to reach out and say, hey, would you mind, could you be in my book? And the reception I got for their participation was awesome. I mean, a big shout out to every single one of them. So.
Yeah, they're all good. I've actually known Joe since she was a title rep back in the day.
Yeah.
That goes back. Yeah, it goes back a few years, just a little bit.
Yeah.
Here. Texas, which is great. She's definitely gone a long way. The thing, what's the one thing that you would love? Hope's Place, great. Love that you got a charity involved with that. And you're giving back to the community, helping out with that, and that's a very needed thing there in Plano. But what's one thing that you would love for the readers of the book to walk away with when they're thinking about this and they finish the book, when they walk away? What's one thing that you would really, that underlying message that you really want them to walk away with?
That, you know what, no matter where you're at in life, that you can do this. If you have a passion, if you're open to a little bit of risk, you know, because it is a little bit risky, and have confidence in yourself that if I can do it, if any of the gals in it, then you can too. So that you have sisters out there, brothers, that will support you, but you have to be able to reach out and make yourself available and let people know that you're interested in it. And so I think the main message is that, you know, you can do this, you know, you can do it. We did it, and we're just normal gals. We're normal gals. So we weren't, no, I don't think any of us, I'm trying to think, none of us were born with a silver spoon in our mouth, you know. Whatever we have today is what we created, and you can do the same for yourself. You can make the life that you want. You just have to ask yourself, you know, how can you do this? So buy the book so that you can start your journey.
There you go. Your deal in high heels. Your journey,
right.
one step at a time, right? Well, that's a beautiful thing about it. Is I agree. So many great stories in there. People getting started for nothing. People, you know, amazing women. I know most of them in the book, and it's great stories. Learned some interesting things about some of them I didn't know beforehand, which is great. But that's the thing. Everybody comes from a different background. Everybody's got different obstacles they deal with, and it's all about not saying no. You know, maybe you say not right now, or maybe we all have a dream, and sometimes life gets in the way of dreams. We just got to set that dream down a little bit and then pick it back up and run with it. There's nothing wrong with that, and that you have to realize. What I love about you, Nancy, you're always smiling. You've always got energy. You're always willing to lend a hand to anybody out there. And I noticed that this last February, over a year ago on the FFN cruise, you're always sitting there visiting with people, always learning, always taking notes. That's the beauty I love about it.
Okay, funny story, because remember I went to the meeting with Kristen. That's how I met her. And so Amy Sayer was also there. And Amy told me last night, she goes, you were sitting in the second row, third from the end, and the reason she remembered me is because I was taking notes and asking all kinds of questions. And that was like, and that's how they, but you know, I want to be respectful too. You know, if I'm in the company of, you know, Scott, of yourself, or Kristen, or Jamie, or Missy Wilson, or whoever it is, I want to be respectful of what they know. And my way of showing that is to be attentive and ask questions. And sometimes I've been dinged by, you know, haters that I ask too many questions. But you know what? I was just born curious. I remember one time I have to tell this trip. I took a trip to California. I had never been to California. And I was, you know, Disneyland when I was a kid. But I had never been to, I think we were up by Sacramento or something like that. And so in the car, there was a person driving, and there was another person that was, you know, that had lived there. And I was like, well, what's that? What's that? What's that? And she literally turned around and said, if you ask one more question, I'm putting you out of the car. And I'm like, well, you know what? And I just never stop asking questions.
Well, that's the beautiful thing. I'm a big believer there's no dumb questions. The only dumb question is the one that doesn't get asked. You know? Yeah. That's the big thing. Don't be afraid to ask, because I guarantee, especially if you're in a crowd, if you're thinking it, I bet somebody else in the crowd is thinking it as well.
Right? Yeah. And I don't know, for me, that's how I learn. And, you know, I can be a pretty direct person, but, you know, I want to, if I don't know the answer, then I'll go find it. You know, if something's not working. So we have a great problem. We're getting, you know, how when you start scaling and then you start, you know, and when you grow, it's a great thing. But then that creates other problems. So then you got to, you know, so it's always going back and kind of revisiting your goals and your, you know, measurements, and, you know, what are you spending your time on, and how can you improve so that you can go to the next level. And I love that. It's, you know, I love that we're growing. And I know when I meet people, you know, that's what I'll say, you know, you have to have a plan. And when you achieve the goals in that plan and you're growing, well, you got to have a new plan. You just can't stick with the same old plan. You got to keep revisiting it. So
keep evolving. You got to, it's a webinar I did last night on how your end game changes constantly. You got to be things. Definitely good stuff. We could talk all day, Nancy. What's the best way for those that want to get a hold of you, reach out to you? What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Okay, so they can email me at nancy@kbnhomes.com, or they can visit my website at kbnhomes.com, or they can reach me at 469 I have to look at the number, 430-9885, or even better, they can pick up a book and all my contacts in the back of the book.
There you go. Good stuff. Well, hey, Nancy, thank you so much for being such an awesome guest out here on the Note Closer Show. Once again, everybody, go out. Winning Deals in Heels. You can pick up a copy. Portions go to a great cause there in the Plano area there. Great stories, great gift for Mother's Day, or just to somebody who's important in your life and you want to help give them some great inspirational stories, help them overcome obstacles. So, Nancy, thank you again so much for being a guest on the show. Look forward to your continued success and seeing you on the Oprah Show at some point, right?
All right. Very good. Thank you so much, Scott. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good time. Bye.
Bye. All right. Hey, everybody, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Note Closer Show. Go out, take some action, make your own winning story today. Don't be afraid. Pick up the phone, reach out to somebody. There's always people around there here to help you out there. Whether they're wearing boots or heels, they've got something positive contribute to help you get to that end game a little bit faster for us and make that journey to the top faster. So go out. We'll see you all at the top, everybody.